Hello RPGers, and welcome again to Briefings for the Descent. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about how to make your RPG group last. It's a struggle that we all have from time to time, so stay tuned and check it out. Alright folks, thanks for clicking on the video. Be sure to like us and subscribe on YouTube. Keep these things going. I'm Ken Oswald, your host, and I'm here today with Michael Doughty. He is a gaming enthusiast for quite some time.
A giant dork.
As we all are. I will be putting that to the test. So.
That's okay, yeah.
And of course, Briefings for the Descent is all about role-playing games and talking about that geeky stuff that we like about it. Now you, Dottie, are not just a role-playing game enthusiast. You are a gamer. You're like a pro.
I cut my teeth on BattleTech back in the day, and that was my first foray into it. And from there, it was just a descent to, it was a briefing for the descent to just emptying my wallet into any game I could find.
Absolutely. Which is the geek way.
Yeah.
For sure. You've even done the ultimate monetary investment, Warhammer 40K.
I kind of regret it.
Role-playing games tend to be
don't
cheap.
anymore, but yeah, role-playing games are cheaper and you can get a lot more longevity out of this.
Right. So, speaking of money sinks, we're going to get to today's magic item. We're going to talk about roll for initiative.
Good for the sponsor.
It's very great because they know that when we say that, everyone's going, "Wait, I can spend money on something."
It's worth the money.
It's true. So we're going to talk about Roll for Initiative's diffusion dice. Now these guys have been around for a while, making all sorts of RPG products, including DM screens, tiles. You name it, and now they've got fancy new dice. We'll show you guys some pictures of that and give you a website number. But the diffusion dice are kind of, ChessX did something similar to this.
It's sort of something
like Nebula dice, I guess.
Injected into the
Right. So you've got these really cool dice that really are comprised of two colors. There's a translucent and kind of an opaque, inky thing to them. So
it's like blood inside the glass.
Yeah. And these are not even. These. So not only is it a cool color, but you'll notice these dice have a little bit larger numbers than typical dice.
For you.
Yes, I knew it was coming. Easy to read at the table if you're playing in candlelight or if you're just old. But yeah, so these guys do a great job of putting their products out there and got cool colors. Now these are not popularly released yet, I do not believe, but I happened to be at GaryCon and got the preview, and it was fantastic. So look out for those and throw those guys some love. So, this week's crit hit, the big thing that you should be interested in, because you do SCA and that sort of stuff. I don't anymore, but yeah. Or you finally got beat out of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wackadoo in SCA. We're talking about Cave Geek Art. And here's their website, and Cave Geek Art is all about cool animal hide looking handmade maps of campaign worlds. So this is hand-burned, embossed, and painted maps. So they've got this nice 3D texture to it, as you can see on our background today.
And I took a look around at some of the stuff, and I'm really into it. There's people out there that do this stuff. The putting the color to the skins. The level of detail put into it. If you're a fan of Warhammer Fantasy, if you're a fan of Dark Sun or something like that, that is just a beautiful addition. Or just you love Lord of the Rings and you have your big thing of Middle Earth up on your wall.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about Kiffer, the artist that does these, is he does anything and everything. He's already got Tolkien maps up there for Middle Earth. He's got some classic D&D campaign material. I mean, and he takes commissions. He'll do anything. And the great thing about watching our episode today is, on the screen right now is your own personal coupon code to get a discount on Cave Geek Art maps. So do check out that website. Think about what cool map you would like to do, even one of your own. He'll take your hand-drawn map and turn it into a masterpiece.
Oh man!
I know. See, speaking of more things you can
go get an artist.
throw money on, yes, it is crazy. So, Donnie, you're here with us today, and we're going to get into the main topic. This has got to be something near and dear to your heart. You've played RPGs for a good long time, and one of the things that happens is you get an idea for a game, or you and your friends decide, hey, we want to play D&D, or we want to play an RPG, and you get the group together, and you play maybe a session or two, maybe 3, and then suddenly it falls apart.
Yes. That happens to every GM, and I'm speaking to this from the GM perspective, because in any D&D game or role-playing game I've been in, I've been blessed with the fact that it has gone longer.
Yeah.
To the fruition of some storyline somewhere. But as a GM, happens pretty often.
Yeah.
And that's more or less due to people's schedules, or eventually somebody gets disinterested. And what you're trying to do, what you're wanting to do is keep player interest, keep involvement. Yeah,
that's kind of my big thing is I feel like, because I'm around a lot of society play. You know, I organized for Hoover Public Library's Pen and Paper Society. In Excelsior, we had crazy ton amount of RPGs. So, and there is a difference between society play and the reasons people do that and your home games. Both are susceptible to this problem where, you know, suddenly your players aren't there. So how do you get it to last? And you said it, something that I think is key to it, which is player expectation. So little, usually when we put these games together, I know as GMs, longtime GM, you put together a game and you don't necessarily talk to your players about what you're doing.
A big one for me, it's a big one that I like to throw out to other starter GMs, is comment cards right before you start your game.
Yes.
Like passing out, what do you want out of this game? What are you expecting for your character? You know, what are your triggers? Stuff like that. Like, what should I not keep in the game or put in the game? If I said keep in the game, it makes me seem horrible. No.
Indeed.
But it's a beautiful amount of feedback that you can get in that helps you tailor the game's, your 3-hour session. You can tailor individual bits of it to individual players, keeping them interested, and always end on a cliffhanger because they have to come back to it.
Right.
Scheduling aside, scheduling's its own proper issue, but you're wanting to keep the player interested in the game, in the story you are helping to tell.
Absolutely true. One of the great tools for that I like using is called the X card. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So the X card is all about, it's kind of like in soccer when you throw down a red card. Mm-hmm. It's something that you absolutely don't want to happen in an RPG for whatever reason. So one of the things you can do as a GM is you can tell players, okay, you have X cards, and you can say, hey, I'm really just not interested in this being in my role-playing game experience. Like, for instance, slavery, or child abuse, or what have you, excessive violence. Why are you in RPGs then? But anyway, that's a stereotype, right?
We all know that there is one RPG out there that no one will ever want to play ever. We all know the name of it, and we're not going to talk about it. There we go.
There's probably more, but
there's more, but there's one prime example.
Well, there's so many that get very one-sided, and just like figuring out what your players expect from your game, choosing the right role-playing game can also be important to this end too. Because once you kind of know what you want to do, the players have some input. They've used the X card and say, "Hey, I don't want a particular thing in the game." You can then turn to the actual selection of an RPG,
system,
and say, "Hey, this looks like it has the toolbox to fit what we want to do. Let's do that."
Do you want a more in-depth combat game? Do you want a lighter, vaguer sort of role-playing game like a Fate or something along those lines?
Yeah, narrative kind of thing.
Or do you want somewhere in the middle with D&D or any D20 system at that point? Yeah.
Yeah. So
which it's more or less the question of how much crunch versus how much chew.
Yeah, now we're getting into those things that I love, GNS theory and that sort of thing. The elements of RPGs, and that certainly can be a consideration. But I think doing something just as simple as like what you're talking about, getting feedback from your players, especially up front, as to what you want to do, and using things like the X card to help kind of tune it up and direct your game to where everyone's having a good time.
Even with a horror game, you don't want to disgust your players.
Well, right. Well, you can, depending on who they are.
Yeah.
But it's so easy, we ignore the fact that we can put elements in a game, like horror, gross horror, and we can just fade to black. I mean, movies and television do this all the time, maybe less so nowadays. But, it's a classic treatment of keeping your rating, I guess, your table rating for your audience.
I need to ask my players what they rate me.
That's a different kind of rating. Oh, man. Yeah, that would be crazy. But yeah, so you can definitely do things to extend and get a good return on a role-playing game where you're not just playing 2 or 3 sessions and it falls apart, but you get a real, what we call a campaign out of it, or a story arc, and you can play for a solid year or more and really get a good amount of enjoyment out of this hobby.
If you do the longevity, if you can keep player interest and you can work longevity into your game correctly, I ran Call of Cthulhu 5th ed, into 6th ed, into 7th ed.
Oh, that's a nice stretch.
In one continuous game. Now, 6th ed was out when I started it. 5th ed was all I had. But it was about a 3.5-year game. My friend Dash Holman has run his homebrew Savage Worlds game for almost 5 years now.
Nice. Yeah. I think my longest is probably going to be D&D 3.5, 3.0, 3.5. That's about 10 years.
All right.
Yes, it was 10 years. Alas, I mean, that was the thing, because you moved into 4th ed, and I'm from probably some older players and gamers, and 3.0, 3.5 was just a little more our thing than 4th was.
I'm getting that. I'm getting that stuff now from younger players.
Yes. While 4th ed was out, you definitely had the new people that came to it. It was like, oh, it's a great game. And it is.
Yeah.
But people had to approach that for what it was. It was more tactical. Everything was kind of reduced to tactics, and again, nothing wrong with that. But if you want kind of the classic, what we now call OSR experience. You're probably looking for something like a 3.5 or a 5e. 5e is really great for that.
5e is fantastic.
But you can, and that campaign from 3.5, even though we skipped 4th ed, still continues to this day in 2 different groups in 5e. So we've managed to make it last a good long time. So
nice.
Let's talk about maybe the longest role-playing game running ever. Campaign. Okay, so you start with a group of players and characters, and you continue in that same campaign world. What do you think the longest one is? The longest.
Somebody pretending to be who they really aren't, and just saying it's their life.
This is street cred amongst some. How long can they make it go?
I'm gonna guess. You said 10 years, and I believe that. I think I know who it is because I watched the YouTube video about this, I think. I want to say it's upwards of 45 years, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty close. And do you remember what the game is?
I don't know what it started as, but it did change over time.
Some. Honestly, what it changed into was D&D.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is the Blackmore game.
That was it.
Now, for the serious D&D lore enthusiasts, they will know that Blackmore is part of... They will know... We'll talk about my age. They will know that Blackmore is part of the Great Kingdom, which is most popularly known as Greyhawk, the world of Greyhawk.
Greyhawk is the best setting.
Well, Blackmore was another castle to the north, and this was Dave Arneson's, this co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons. This was his game.
Yeah.
And it actually predates Dungeons and Dragons by several years. And it's it's really...
Is this what went on to become Castles and Crusaders, or is this...
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little complex, but effectively Dave Arneson put together this medieval fantasy game, this role-playing game, called it Blackmore because it focused around Blackmore Castle, which was his kind of master dungeon. It was really... There were no such things as dungeon crawls back then, except in Dave Arneson's game. He's the one that created that.
Yeah.
So all of his players, he's taken through that, and it continued in its original form to this very day. Now, Dave Arneson passed away, I think it was around 2011 or so.
Yeah, it was a little while ago.
A while back.
Yeah.
But it still continues. And Bob Meyer, one of his players from that original time period, is now the game master of that game. And he has continued to run it, usually has an annual game meetup of those original players to this very day, usually in May. Just so happens that it's happening this May on the 25th, 26th, and 27th, and
just in time for high school to get out for summer. There you go.
Indeed. But yours truly will be a support game master
in
that game in Minneapolis.
Very nice.
So, but yeah, that is the longest running campaign ever. And it's amazing that you can keep a group of friends and a group of enthusiasts together for that long. But when you run a compelling game, when you really find that niche that appeals to people, you can push it for as long as you want.
And I agree on that. All of the pretty dice, the fancy screens, the miniatures, the mats and stuff, that all helps enhance the game as it goes. But it comes down to player interest, and it comes down to good storytelling and a compelling line.
It does. Engaging.
Yeah.
Yes, to make a great game. Well, that's our episode for this week. Be sure to give us a shout out, give us your comments and suggestions online about future episodes, and if you are someone that would like to sponsor us and show off a product, please contact us at the email address below, and give us ideas and suggestions, audience, for what you would like to see next time. Dottie, is there anything in particular you would like to see on an upcoming episode of Briefings for the Descent?
I just recently got the Warhammer book.
Oh, yeah.
I really want to see you do a review of that thing.
Warhammer Fantasy, right?
Yeah.
As a role-playing game.
The fourth ed Warhammer Fantasy book.
Well, that we may have to squeeze in there. Maybe we can have you back for that as well.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Later.